Good day, everybody. This is Emar Sopertu, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We are broadcasting on February 2nd, 2021, our first February broadcast of the new year. Hope everything is going well with you in the world. If you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the Sports Inquirer or Sports Inquirer. Just search us and you'll be able to find out everything that we're doing. Subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under the Sports Inquirer, and you will find all of our archived shows from the Sports Inquirer Show to Verbal Submission, which is our mixed martial arts and professional wrestling podcast, and everything else we have going on in the world of sports related to our site. So on today's broadcast, we will break down the big Matt Stafford Jared Goff trade between the Rams and the Lions in the NFL. I'll delve into some initial thoughts on the Super Bowl, which takes place this upcoming weekend. We'll move into the backdoor cut, recap the Hawks and Lakers contest from last night, as well as a look at the NBA standings. And in the miscellaneous department, we will break down a major trade in Major League Baseball. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets men's basketball team, Atlanta United, making front office moves, and the Atlanta Dream as well, signing a major free agent this past week. So we will break down all of that content for you. But things are going well here in Atlanta, Georgia, dealing with some, I shouldn't say inclement weather. I would, because all my, if you're not new to the show, from originally from New York City, and we're based in Atlanta, Georgia now, that's where I live. And I'm complaining about some cold weather in the 30s with some wind and a little nippy outside, while back home, my original home in New York City, they are getting literally double-digit inches of snow. So if you're in the Northeast, prayers for you and everything going on after this. I have to make some calls or some texts to make sure everyone is doing well up in the Northeast, some friends and family. And so I can't really complain about the weather when I have to wear a jacket and a cap outside, and that's my biggest issue. But no, but things are going well here in Georgia, and as I said, we're just preparing for the Super Bowl coming up this week, and we're in the midst of the NBA season, so that's been very good to be checking that out. College athletics are moving along okay. I know here in Georgia, we're in the middle of basketball season, but all the teams have been affected by the pandemic and games being canceled and things being moved around. I know that the baseball season starts and a lot of spring sports are going to be very active over the next few weeks. So that'll be a lot of strain on the college departments, athletic departments, but they'll have to roll through it. And then being here in Atlanta, excuse me, in Atlanta, we have Kennesaw State football, which is in the FCS. And remember, the FCS did not play football this past fall. They're playing it in the spring. So that means on top of all the spring sports that you think of, like baseball, softball, tennis, you also have football, so that's a lot for the FCS programs are dealing with all of those elements. So that'll be very interesting to see how they handle all of that stuff. But let's move on to the Gridiron Blitz part of our show where we discuss the NFL. And yeah, major trade in the NFL this past weekend with the Detroit Lions sending Matthew Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams in a big trade, and in return getting Jared Goff and a package of picks. Let's go over the elements of the pick specifically and as far as the money goes, and then I'll give my analysis of it. In the trade, the Lions received Jared Goff, another quarterback, a 2021 third round pick, and first round picks in 2022 and 2023. So the Lions get Goff. They get a third round pick in this year's draft, because remember, this is 2021. And they get the Rams' first round picks in 2022 and 2023. So the next two drafts after this one upcoming. The Rams also inherited the Rams in their part of the deal. They get 2 years and $43 million remaining on the Stafford contract, and the Lions are going to carry a $17.8 million dead cap hit for this year. And so that's the dynamics on that side. Detroit gets 4 years and $106 million remaining on Goff's contract, and the Rams carry a $22.2 million cap hit in 2021. I look at this trade and I actually see both sides benefiting from it. Look at the players themselves, and we'll get to draft picks as we go through the analysis. I think at quarterback for the Rams, Stafford is an upgrade over Goff. I think that Stafford he's played 12 years in the NFL. We know his story. No 0-3 in the playoffs. No, like one Pro Bowl appearance in his career. No division titles. Just he's durable. I mean, he had some injuries earlier in his career. Shoulder, some finger issues, but he's not had a major season-ending injury. He plays every game. Very physical, very tough. Gotta give him credit there. Puts up a lot of numbers. I would say if you look at pure passing of throwing the ball, him and Josh Allen may have the strongest arms in the NFL. If you're looking at just spinning the ball and throwing it, he can make all the throws. I don't think he's as dynamic of a thrower as Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes as far as throwing it in with their variety and especially when they use their legs to get out of the pocket. But if you look at a guy who can throw from all slot angles and can get the ball down the field, if you drop a quarterback, a guy who has size and stays in the pocket, it's very hard to find a guy much better than Matthew Stafford physically. His production in Detroit was not very good, though. As I mentioned, not much playoff success, a lot of under 500 record overall. But the Lions, if you look at that franchise, has really struggled, and that's an understatement. We discussed the ineptitude so much of the Jets and the Browns, Buffalo up really until this year, and now we're starting to look at teams like the Cleveland with their struggles over the past 15, 20 years, give or take. And now we're starting to see like Washington. People are starting to acknowledge that man, they've had a really bad run in the from the mid 2000s really to now until they made the playoffs this year. But Detroit may have them all beat. Have only played in one conference championship game since the 1960s. So you know what that means? They have not even been to a Super Bowl in history of the Super Bowl era. They have not been to not only have they not only been to an NFC Championship game, they have not made an appearance in the Super Bowl. There are only a handful of teams. I think Cleveland is one, and Jacksonville, Houston. I think those are the only teams in the history of their franchises that have not made at least one Super Bowl appearance. And the Detroit Lions have been around for since the 40s and 50s. So, and had once one back in the day. You can go back and talk about Bobby Lane and all the great quarterbacks. And Stafford's probably the best quarterback since Bobby Lane to be there, which is, I mean, good on his part, but kind of shameful in a way if you look at just the long history of the Lions. And just the ownership has not been good under the Ford family. As I said, they've only won one playoff game in 50 years or 60 years. I mean, that's unacceptable as far as an NFL franchise. Now, Stafford has played around good talent in the past. Calvin Johnson, the most likely Hall of Famer, he played his entire career in Detroit. So it's not like Stafford hasn't had weapons to play with. No Pro Bowl running backs, and I think they had no Pro Bowl offensive linemen until this year during his entire time. That just shows the lack of scouting and lack of talent evaluation that Stafford has had to deal with during his time there. But you can also argue that a guy of his talent should find a way to put together at least one good year, one division title. And I know Aaron Rodgers has been in that division his entire career, and he's won a lot of titles. But Minnesota has found a way to elevate themselves. Chicago and their ineptitude at quarterback over the years, they found a way to at least win a division, win a playoff game, appear in a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman at quarterback. And as many issues you may have with Stafford, Rex Grossman and Stafford should not even be in the same sentence as far as quarterback skills. So you add all that together, it's like what went wrong with Stafford in Detroit? And I laid all that stuff out. But if you're the Rams, and you look at their side of things, they have gone all in with the win now mentality. They've traded away first round draft picks, not only for Goff back in the day to get to move up to pick him as the top overall pick during his draft. They've traded away multiple first rounders for Jalen Ramsey, and now they've traded away multiple first round picks to bring in Matthew Stafford. They don't have a first round pick, I think, for the next 6 years. So until 2029 or 2030, you literally look it up. They're not going to have a first round pick in the draft. That means they're going all in with top level talent. They like to bring in guys in that regard. That's the Les Needs approach to things, the general manager, and also Sean McVay, the head coach of the team. And McVay is the de facto general manager of that squad, and they're putting a lot of pressure on it. And I think that for the Goff side of things, look, I think he came into the league. His first year was under Jeff Fisher, did not go very well. I think McVay did a good job of developing Goff and bringing him along. And only 3 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl. He had playoff road wins against Seattle this year. They won at New Orleans a few years ago. And yes, the Super Bowl was a 13-3 contest against the Patriots. It was here in Atlanta. Did not go very well. And I think that they were out schemed and out coached by Belichick, and Brady outplayed them as far as on the field. But that happens. A lot of teams that's happened too. There's no really shame in that. They still made a Super Bowl appearance, but it really got to the point where it seemed like every time the Rams did well, it was all about McVay and him being the young coaching head coaching wonder, the savant, the prodigy, and all the stuff he's doing. Yet every time the Rams lost, it was on Goff. And yes, he has regressed from that Super Bowl appearance. He has the second most turnovers for a quarterback over the past 2 years. That's interceptions and fumbles lost. So he has not played at a very superstarish level, but he still has been very competent. And I was really impressed this past year. He came back from the broken thumb and a broken finger, found his way back onto the field, and was able to lead the Rams to a victory at Seattle. I don't just ignore that. I thought that showed a lot of grit from him, and I thought he played okay in that contest. And I thought he played okay against the Packers a few weeks ago in the playoffs. I think the Rams defense, and this is where look, they have Jalen Ramsey, maybe the best cornerback in the NFL. Aaron Donald, I would say maybe not only the best defensive tackle in the NFL, but maybe the best defensive player in the league. And we talk about Hall of Famers. If at this rate, he'll be there. And if he plays like this the next few years, someone say he's already earned his Hall of Fame spot. So you have two top talents there and some other guys on the defense. They had the best defense this past year statistically. But I really thought the defense lost that contest against the Packers. Now, the Packers probably still would have won the game in the playoffs a few weeks ago, but they gave up the 20 plus points in that game. Now the Rams only scored 12, and they were in low double digits, but still, I think that Goff has become a scapegoat for a lot of the Rams' problems. I mentioned the contract details, the 4 years, $106 million left in the contract, which, if you look at the numbers, really is not that bad. People talk about the albatross that is the Jared Goff contract and them wanting to get out from under it. That's only, quick math, that's about $26 million per year. That's not bad for over 4 years. That's not a bad contract for a starting quarterback. We're going to see Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson probably this offseason sign in the $35 to $40 million range per year. And that's where Mahomes is already. And Dak Prescott is going to be in that range as well. And Goff is still in his mid 20s. It's not like in Stafford's 32, so you pick there's a little bit of age difference there. I don't see why McVay cannot work it out with Goff to make that work. But I think in relationships with employment, just in life in general, we have what we have currently in our life. But then we look at the other side of things. We look across the country, and you can see the Rams with Detroit, when they made their proclamation that Stafford would not be returning to the team, which I understood. I think both parties, Stafford and the Lions, need to rebuild and move on from each other. I think the Rams see the arm talent, and you already heard about McVay and Stafford having dinner together or a meal together in Mexico. And Stafford owns a home in California. He's out there quite often, or in Los Angeles specifically. So obviously there's a relationship that's developed from there, and they've crossed paths, I'm sure, in the past. And I see McVay looking at a Stafford and seeing all that arm talent and all the ability that he has, and looking at Goff, who he already has under his fold, and being enamored by Stafford. But I think it's one of those things where, and this is where the I'll say the from the Rams side of things, they have to be very careful. The draft pick part of things, I don't necessarily think that's a problem. I think what it really hurts you though is depth. I mean, obviously you get the top flight talent. You have the highlighters, the Donalds, Stafford now, Jalen Ramsey. But that's only three players out of 22 starters, and even beyond that, your 50 plus man roster on opening day or on a game day. That's where they're really going to be hurting. They're going to have to do really well in the second round, the seventh rounds, in picking up talent. And everyone, that's why I look at the first rounders and say, oh, they're not very valuable. There's so many busts. And yes, I mean the majority. If you look at first round picks, I would say more than half do not do well for their respective teams. But define doing well. I think doing well is being a rotation player, a lot of being a starter, and you're going to have a much better chance of that happening with first round picks. But I think the Rams' perspective, they have the new stadium, they're in a win now mentality. They felt like they had to upgrade the quarterback position as far as looking at Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray with the Seahawks and the Cardinals, respectively. And I think they felt that they had the worst quarterback, and Garoppolo as well, in San Francisco. They felt they had the worst quarterback in that division, and that's arguable. But they decided to go the route of upgrading to Stafford. And Stafford only has, as a 2 years and $43 million remaining on his contract. I think that they're going to probably, if I was Stafford, I'd want an extension. And that's where, if you're going to do the extension, that's where you're going to hike yourself up into that 35 to $40 million range for that deal. And as I said, I don't think Stafford's going to walk. If I was his agent, I wouldn't walk in there blindly just with those 2 years in the books. They're going to have to sign an extension or make a raise or something. And that's where Goff may look like a bargain deal for them. But if you look at the team right now, if you're looking at 2021, this upcoming season, are the Rams really in a much better spot than they were before they made the trade? I still think the Seahawks are going to be just as good or a better team than the Rams because you look at the division. I put them as second best. I think San Francisco is a team that dealt with a lot of injuries last year, and that Super Bowl hangover is real. I think a year away from that, if they get Bosa back healthy and Solomon and get a lot of their guys back on the field, I think Garoppolo's a competent quarterback. I don't understand the dislike for Garoppolo all of a sudden, but I think if he has a bounce back year and he can get healthy, and health has been an issue for him in the past, but if he's on the field for a full season and with their talent, there's no reason that the 49ers cannot be a playoff team themselves. So I still think the Rams are in that second or third best team in their own division. And plus, you add to it, if you look at the rest of the NFC, obviously Green Bay is a better team. The Bucks, well, it all rides on Tom Brady, obviously, but he's coming back next season unless he has a complete drop off in his play. I mean, which is possible with his age. I mean, I know he's doing great right now, but you never know. But I still think the Bucks probably are a better team on paper than the Rams. And then the NFC East is a complete mess, in that regard. So I still think the Rams are where they were this past season, maybe the fourth or fifth best team in the NFC, even with Stafford. So I don't know. I guess they figure that they do eliminate a few years on Goff's contract, and maybe that gives them flexibility. If Stafford is a bust, maybe they could get rid of Stafford and go a different direction. I guess that's the way they can look at it. I don't necessarily see that. Now on the trade side of things, all things considered, I think that it's a good move when the whole world knows that Stafford is not coming back to your team, and you're able to take in a quarterback in his mid 20s with a team friendly contract I said 4 years and $106 million. I mean, look, all of you us listening to us, we look at $25 million per year, and it's like, wow, a that's not a discount. That's a amount of money that maybe none of us will ever see in our lives. I get that, but professional sports and specifically a quarterback in the NFL perspective, that is not a bad deal at all. So you get a young guy, you have 4 years of him, maybe even two or three if Goff is completely bad goods and cannot play well at any level, that contract is not impossible to cut and get rid of. But you get a project, and Dan Campbell, their new head coach, gets someone to work with. I think that the change of scenery is good for Goff. I think he went through that Fisher era. He made his way through it with McVay, but I guess the relationship just was, and with when you had Snead talking about if if Goff is returning, he says it's a beautiful mystery, kind of channeling Aaron Rodgers and his discussion with Pat McAfee on his radio show about if he's going to return to the Packers, and then you have a McVay head coach on the Rams saying that he's our quarterback for now. When those words are uttered, that's not a good sign. So I think that was a situation where Goff needed to get out of there. And plus, you get some draft pick compensation. Now, the Rams are probably not going to bottom out and be in the top five or top 10, but those picks are very good. You get a third rounder this year, and you get, and a third rounder can turn into a rotation guy, maybe even a starter for your team. And then two first rounders over the next 2 years, in addition to your own. I think that the Detroit, who really needs to gut that entire roster and start from scratch, can do some good things with those picks. So I think overall, this draft, or not the draft, the trade was, both sides found benefits in it. The only thing I would caution is the expectations for Stafford are a little high. As far as I've read stuff that he can lead the team to a Super Bowl and makes them a favorite in the NFC West. I would hold off on that right now. I think the Rams have a very good roster, and we've broken down some of their elite players. But I don't, guys. There are no excuses for Stafford right now. And then all people that really like him and say he's the top five talent in the NFL as far as quarterback position goes. There are no excuse for McVay, because I'm telling you, every time the Rams lost a contest, and you would hear the fans and analysts, Goff does this bad, he does that bad, and he's not a perfect quarterback. I would say he's maybe a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, which is okay, which is above average. But I think that you looked at him, people looked at him so much as a guy that was the reason that they were losing. And I don't necessarily think that was the case all on him. So McVay gets his quarterback that he really likes. Stafford gets a change of scenery. He heads to Los Angeles, gets out of the albatross that are the Detroit Lions, and we'll see what happens from there. But I think the win, if you look at the trade, both sides have some check marks, a win and some risk. But I think Detroit really came out better in this trade, just because the youth of Goff, the money that he's owed, and get some draft picks. So those are my thoughts on that. As far as Super Bowl goes, nothing really coming out of Tampa this past week. I saw some pictures from Radio Row, which is usually with hundreds and literally hundreds of radio entities, from your broadcasters, not a podcast, the TV stations, your national ones, as was local, all usually have a spot in some convention hall and everything like that. I think the numbers now are only 30 credentialed media entities are on Radio Row overall. And there were some pictures from yesterday, and it was a ghost town. There was no one there. I think for obvious reasons, the pandemic and everyone trying to stay home. You saw local media there from Tampa, and then also Tampa. The games in Tampa, and the local media covering the Bucks are in Tampa already. So the Radio Row presence is not necessarily as big. When the local team is literally hosting the game, or a local city, you're not going to have a lot of out of town media. So I think that in a way the NFL benefited from that. They didn't have to deal with, say, if the Packers won that game, all the Wisconsin media coming into to Florida having to cover the game. Kansas City media is there as well. But I'm looking at the other entities, your big, your heavy hitters, your ESPNs, your NBCs, your Fox Sports. I don't even think they have a media presence at the game yet, as far as in studio or like from the. Now Fox is calling the. I think it's this is Fox. Oh goodness, I should know this. It might be CBS actually. Well, the point is that we're not seeing much national media down there yet. Now it is Tuesday and the game's on Sunday, so there's some time for that to ramp up. But that's what I've noticed from there. And then also technology has really changed the game as far as media day stuff. I was not able to watch it yet as far as the 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 media day stuff from yesterday, but I saw Pat Mahomes talk, Tom Brady. They were doing the Zoom calls or digital calls. You get everything you need from there. That whole process of having them on the stage, and it's really more organized for the media, I think, in a way. You're not having to fight your way to ask questions and have a bunch of sweaty big people around you and all that stuff. You're able to ask your questions in an organized way and you get clear answers. You can record it while they're answering it. You get a clear audio. So if you're into getting content like me, it's actually beneficial. All these Zoom calls or Skype or whatever technology you use to talk to people, I think it's very good and done in a very good way. So we'll have on our next few shows we'll have more on the Super Bowl as it takes place. As far as the pick goes, I've been wavering both ways. I picked Kansas City to win Super Bowl. My Super Bowl pick was Kansas City and Seattle. You saw how that went as far as the Seattle side of things. But I got the Chiefs in there for my Super Bowl pick. I'm sticking with the Chiefs to win it. But Tampa's intriguing, especially when you look at as we record this show, three offensive linemen, including Eric Fisher, who's out with an Achilles injury. Three of the offensive linemen that had played starters for the Chiefs are not going to play in this contest. And we saw what Shaq Barrett and Jace Pierre-Paul, defensive linemen for the Bucks, were able to do in putting pressure on Aaron Rodgers 2 weeks ago in the NFC Championship game. They could do the same against Mahomes, and that's the way to beat the Chiefs. You got to put pressure on Mahomes and get him to. Now he has so many good outlets with their receivers, especially throwing to Kelsey, the tight end, and Hill, the wide receiver. We all know this. But if you could get pressure on Mahomes, and he has good escapability, but still, if you're able to get that pressure on him consistently and make him rush things and put no quarterback likes pressure. So that's where the if you can get pressure on him, and then you have guys like Devin White that can cover Kelsey from the linebacker position, I think that the Bucks defense can make this a very interesting contest in that regard. And I think that's how they'd have to win the game. They'd have to defensively limit Kansas City to around 30 points, and then the Bucks will have to find a way to score 30 plus. You're not going to be able to win the game 17-10 against Kansas City. That's probably not going to happen. But that's going to be very intriguing seeing that matchup. So Kansas City's my pick, but I'm looking at that Bucks defense and looking at the struggles of protecting Mahomes as a potential factor in that contest. All right, let's transition to the backdoor cut portion of our show and discuss some NBA action. I did watch the Atlanta contest against the Lakers last night. The Lakers able to win 107-99, and I think obviously my thoughts on it were the Hawks really miss DeAndre Hunter. That is a guy that for them, you would think when you look at the Hawks, obviously Trey Young is the highlight guy, the one that you focus on. You transition over to Clint Capella, and Capella had 16 points, 13 rebounds, another double double. He's putting himself together an all-star caliber season. John Collins, obviously another guy that is a big presence for the Hawks. He had 22 points in the contest. And Trey had a good night as well. 25 points, 16 assists for a double-double himself. But I looked at DeAndre Hunter, that two-way player was really missing in the contest. Anthony Davis had his way in the game, 25 points. We're only 2 rebounds, which was odd, but he had his way. LeBron, typical night, 21 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. And the thing about LeBron, we watch him a lot throughout our entire sports watching history. I think it's weird because he's going to go down when he retires, which may be 20 years from now, the way he goes. He's going to go down as a top 5 player all time, and that's a debate for another day, but that's a rough estimate. Top 10, of course, top 5, arguably. I think we take him for granted. And it's very easy. We're in an era we're very critical of our athletes because there's more. You're listening to me right now, and we can analyze every play, every snap, every contest a person plays, and say he had a good game, he had a bad game, he did that. So how does he compare to generations ago and all this other stuff? But I think as a sports fan or supporter, what I like saying supporter more than fan, you take a step back and you watch the man. He probably had a B minus type game by his standards and still put together that night and control the entire contest, especially in the fourth quarter where he had a good amount of his points and step back three, had a jumper, made his free throws, and really led that push in the fourth quarter for the Lakers to win the contest. But yeah, you just look at, and as I look at the numbers, for some guys, that's if they average that, they're an all star and all NBA player. 21, 9, and 7. Two steals as well, and a block, just to round out the entire box score. That's what he averages his entire career. That's like a B minus night for him. And statistically, he's going to probably be the all time leading scorer, probably be top 3 or 4 in assists, rebounding top 5 or 10. No one's going to have that stat line. Plus 4 NBA championships. I mean, the man's going to have maybe the best on paper, maybe the best career of all time. Now, Russell has more championships. Kareem has the more MVPs, and he has titles himself. I don't know if he's going to ever reach. Let's see, Kareem. He's not going to reach 6 titles, most likely. Or he might. You never. I said the he's a cyborg. He's an alien. He might play another 10 years. But point being is, last night watching that contest, and obviously we cover the Hawks and do a lot of Hawks content on here. But when the Hawks and the Lakers cross paths, you can see LeBron really up close and personal for an entire contest. You really have to appreciate the man. And plus, and I've always said this about him, and then we'll move on to the rest of the NBA and some more things. I've always said, and he's a few years younger than me, so I've seen the man from high school all the way to now. If there was anybody that could have been a test case for a prodigy gone wrong, it could have been him. You look at his family background, all the attention he received, the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high schooler, it could have gone really, really wrong for him as far as losing focus on the game, not playing up to his talent, off court issues, injuries, all the things that we see can derail a career. Not only has he met expectations, he's honestly surpassed them as far as all the attention he got in the beginning of his career, going to Cleveland, dealing with all of that. We don't remember the decision going to Miami and how the process of choosing Miami was looked down upon by a lot of people, including me. I didn't mind him going to Miami, but the way he did it with the TV show and the all that stuff, that was bad. And we all know it's a bad movie. People still kill him for it. It's been 10 plus years now. Get over it. But as I said, there have been so many cases of child prodigies, whether it's in acting and music and athletics, that got attention and were unable to live up to it, and then they got derailed, whether it was through an addiction or just sports as injuries, bad advice, and it really didn't go well for them. But LeBron's one of the only guys I can think of that it actually, from beginning to end, has worked out very well for him. You see what he does in community. He, I mean, I'm sure he's not an angel, but you don't really hear about any arrest or any all of the bad things off the court that can get to anybody. And plus, on the court, the man is, I said, a top 5 all time player. So watching the game last night, I realized all this, and you're gonna have no one even mentioned their names, but if you watch Fox Sports and your ESPNs, all the talking heads on there during the day, LeBron have one turnover in a contest, and Jordan would never do that, or Kareem would never do that, or Magic Johnson. Like, look, those debates when he retires, we could have that debate for forever and ever, and that'd be fun stuff. But appreciate the man, what he's doing right now, and acknowledge that. And I think that people don't do that enough. But I tried to do that last night, and I really did. And as far as the standings, the Lakers are still. Let's see, let's pull up standings. Yep, here we go. We'll start with the West. I was gonna go to the East with the Hawks, but since we're talking Lakers and LeBron, we'll go there. The West is very intriguing because the Lakers still are 16-6, very good record. Utah is 15-5. They've been the kind of I want to say don't want to say surprise necessarily because they've been a playoff team the past few years, but there have been a team that's really stepped up. And the Clippers at 16-5 are the only two teams with better records than the Lakers right now. And then the rest of the Western Conference, they're kind of all bunched up together. I think the Clippers are an interesting case because so much attention was put on them last year with the signings of signing Kawhi Leonard to trade for Paul George, and all we saw all the pomp and circumstance that came with that signing, and they did not play well. They had championship aspirations, and losing in the semifinals to Denver, up 3-1 in that series. I know it was in the bubble in Florida, but still, that's a very bad ending to the year. So bad of an ending, they fired. Well, the Clippers and Doc Rivers parted ways, and I say that in quotations. You can't see me, but you can hear it in my voice. Mutually parted ways after the season, and which means that Doc got fired, and they just wanted to be nice about it. And he's at Philadelphia doing this thing, and we'll get to the East in a moment. But you bring in Ty Lue, championship coach, experience, knows how to deal with talent, young talent, and they're 16-5 right now, kind of under the radar right now by their standards because we focus so much on the Lakers and defending champions, understandably so. Utah's been a surprise, so people are acknowledging them like, okay, that's cool. But the Clippers are a team. Are they better than the? We all want to see the Lakers and Clippers in the playoffs just to decide who's the best team in that city. Right now, if Paul George continues to play like he has right now, if Kawhi can stay consistent the way he is, they're going to be a very tough test for the Lakers. So I'm very intrigued. I was intrigued by what I've seen from them as far as that goes. And you look at the rest of the West. Memphis is at 9-6. Now they've had some games, and when you look at these numbers, you can't look at wins and losses necessarily because Memphis had some contests suspended because of COVID, but they're above 500. John Morant's back. That's been a good thing for Memphis. So that's been really good. Phoenix is 11-8. Chris Paul, you know he's going to produce a winning team. He's not going to be on the team with losers in all places he's been. Now, when it gets to the postseason, that's a different story. But regular season, you've seen an uptick from them. They're 11-8. Golden State's 11-9. I think Curry has really tried to prove himself as kind of we must have forgot about him. No, he's still a top 2 3 point guard in the entire NBA. Just he had an injury filled last year. The Warriors had a rough campaign last year. They weren't in the bubble, so we could ignore. They were kind of out of sight. Klay Thompson, obviously, out the Achilles injury really hurts them because I think if he was on the team, they could be right up there with Utah and the Clippers. Honestly, the way that they've played. But you're seeing Curry do his thing. Houston is a 10-9. I think that was a good move with Harden and them moving on. They got some players, they got some picks, and if they find a way into the playoffs, you gotta give Silas credit, the head coach of the team, for helping them to work through that Harden trade in that regard. I look at the Eastern Conference. I think it's Philadelphia and Brooklyn. The top four teams I think are really set in whatever order you want to put them. Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and Boston. Now Boston keeps disappointing me. Well, I should say disappointing me, but when are they going to make that next step? We see the talent. I mean, Jaylen Brown's averaging 25 plus points, and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. We've wanted these two guys to step up and be consistent. We see all of that. Kemba Walker is back this year, so they have him available. Brad Stevens supposed to be a top five coaching in NBA and starting and producing at a championship level. He's kind of like the Sean McVay of the NBA, the prodigy. Yet they're 10-8. And you just I saw that Lakers contest last Saturday. It was in Boston, and you watch that game, and you see Tatum, and you see Jaylen Brown, you see that talent. Now Marcus Smart did get hurt, and I'm not a big fan of Marcus Smart. I think he's overrated, but he does a lot of glue things for the Celtics, and I'm glad he didn't tear his Achilles. I've seen a torn Achilles up close and personal. I knock on wood, it never happens to me, but I've seen knee injuries and I've seen Achilles injuries, and the way he went down and the way he was holding that calf, I was like, oh man, and I don't want, I wish that on nobody. But thankfully, he has a strained calf and he's out 2, 3 weeks, which is a beautiful thing. I think he needs to watch himself though. If that calf is compromised, we saw the same thing happen with Durant in Golden State with that Achilles. So he needs to really watch himself. But he got injured in the contest against the Lakers. I saw that and I was like, I thought he was out for the season, and I was like, man, that's really rough. But so he got hurt in the contest, and that hurt them a little bit in that regard. But as I said, you look at the talent on the floor. In the last 10 games, they're 5-5. Like, what are they missing? You have two all-star wings in Brown and Tatum. They're going to be all-stars this year. Kemba Walker is a solid pro. He could average 20 plus a game. But why are they not like a Philadelphia who's 15-6 this year? Why are they not like a Lakers or a Utah or a Clippers like we've mentioned? What's missing from that entity? And I think until they figure that out, and I don't know what it is, I don't think that they need to trade for anybody or anything like that. But until they figure that out, they're going to still hover in that 4 or 5 seed in the East, which they should be much better than that. They should be 15-6 like Philadelphia is. And I know Embiid is playing at an MVP level, and Ben Simmons has worked his way back into the lineup, and Doc Rivers is a very, very good coach, championship coach. But there's no way they should not have a much better record than they do. But as a Philadelphia, you're looking at them probably as a favorite in the East. I know Brooklyn with Harden, Durant, and Kyrie Irving are on paper. Those are three of the top 10 players probably in the NBA. And some would say Durant is right up there as the best, and Harden is top 4 or 5. When you have that, you would think that's championship guaranteed. You worry about two things with them: their size. Well, three things. Well, two of the three. Well, they all kind of tie together if you think about it. Their lack of size. You see them get beat up on the boards a lot by teams. And that's what we worry about when they face a Philadelphia or Milwaukee. Giannis and Embiid, they're going to have a field day on them. The second thing is lack of wings and losing losing Torian Prince, losing Levert. They lost a lot of talent on their wings. And then it ties to the third thing defensively. Poor is maybe not Poor may be optimistic for their defensive sets. You see the games against Cleveland, even here against Atlanta. I know it went to overtime, and then they lost to Washington this past weekend. When you're averaging giving up 130 points per contest, and you have since the trade for Harden, the worst defensive efficiency in the history of the NBA at this rate, if they keep this up, that's not very good. Now, the flip side of that is that offensively, if they kept it up, they have the best offensive efficiency in history of the NBA. So you literally have if you look at efficiency, the best offense and the worst defense in history. What that does, that'll get you, well, it normally be 50 to 60 wins in the regular season, maybe an appearance in the conference finals, and that's it. Because that defense is going to catch up to you. Because it's much easier to be consistent on the defensive end than the offensive end. But this is a new era in the NBA, and as I said, we've never seen offensive talent of these three guys with that caliber together. Now, there are better trios of all time. Yes, you go back to the Celtics with, well, actually, several versions of the Celtics. But we'll go with the 80s with Bird, McHale, and Parrish. And obviously, we've seen Worthy, Magic, and Kareem with the Lakers. And there have been some fun duos. Klay Thompson and Curry, and I thought Durant, the most recent version of the Warriors win a championship. Obviously, those trios were awesome on a lot of times both ends of the court. But offensively, I think this trio that Brooklyn has may be the best of all time offensively. I'm not saying all time overall, but on paper, and you look at their talent, it has potentially the best of all time. I think that those defensive lapses, and I know it's not the 80s, you don't have to hold teams even the mid to late 90s, where you got to hold teams to 85 points to win. I'm not saying that, but if you could hold team maybe to 100 or 110, that'd be nice. But when you're averaging giving up 120 to 130 points, that's not a good recipe for a championship team. So, but those are my thoughts on the NBA and everything going on there. Let's move on to the miscellaneous department to wrap up our show today. Nolan Arenado being traded to the Cardinals. Typical move by St. Louis. We've seen them do it all these years. We saw it from, going way back in the day, getting Lou Brock from the Cubs. We've seen him trade for Ozzie Smith, Mark McGuire, a Holiday. They bring in these guys that were kind of all over the top talents on their other teams, but for whatever reason, it did not work out. They bring them to St. Louis. They get revitalized, and they end up producing for 5, 6 years of all-world level talent. Goldschmidt as well. This most recent past few years from Arizona. I mean, Aaron Allen's the best third baseman in Major League Baseball. He might be a top five player in all of baseball. He plays in Colorado, so he doesn't get as much attention as you think. But the man's Gold Glove, Hall of Fame Gold Glove talent, hits 30 plus home runs all over. And I know it's not just Colorado. He's an all around hitter. The man is, as I said, outside of Trout and I mean a handful, two or three other guys, maybe Betts if you want to throw him in that hat because of what he's done with the Dodgers of being the best overall talents in Major League Baseball. When you look at the position he plays and his production, offensively, defensively, Arenado's right there as far as the top five of all of baseball. You put him on St. Louis, a team that has a lot of work. I mean, they have a lot of work to do, but that's a winnable division. There's not a standout in the Central at all. And yes, the Dodgers are they're the king of the castle right now, as far as the National League goes. The Braves going to have a lot to say as far as that goes as well. I support the Mets. I love Lindor. That's an awesome move, and they're starting. If they get Bauer, that's even a pitcher. That's even more great things. But you gotta think St. Louis is maybe second or third best team in the NL right now. I will say Atlanta and the Dodgers are better, and we still have we still have more weeks to go. And Lord willing, we get some baseball in within the near future. If the Major League Players Association and the league they rejected their proposal, I think for 150 plus game season that would start a month later, maybe around May. So they're still trying to figure out how they're going to play, and it's a very sensitive issue. But I think when we get back onto the field, and they're going to play games because there's too much money on both sides to be lost if they don't play games this season between the players and the owners. So they'll work it out. But I think once they get onto the field, you're going to see a very interesting dynamic with St. Louis being a team that we know always produces talent as far as their farm system goes. But that's a major move to get, as I said, a top five player into your franchise and he has a few years left of elite level talent, and the contract is not awful. Man, major move by St. Louis getting Arenado at the top third baseman in baseball for their squad. I did catch a little bit of Georgia Tech's loss to Louisville yesterday afternoon. They were defeated at Louisville 74-58 by the Cardinal. Moses Wright, strong game from him. His 10th double double, 15 points and 16 rebounds. In the game, had a career high seven. He blocked career high 7 shots in the game as well. Used this tremendous force on both ends. But Georgia Tech right now, kind of, if girls and the way things are working right now, you gotta say they're a bubble team right now. If you look at the NCAA tournament, 8-6 overall, 4-4 in the ACC. This NCAA tournament is going to be unlike any other. Right now, it's still scheduled. They're going to have all the games in Indianapolis or in the state of Indiana, and I guess around that area. Ultimately, Final Four be in Indianapolis. Hopefully, to get a tournament in and everything like that. We may not even see conference tournaments, and that really hurts a team like a Georgia Tech that could use a win or two maybe in a conference tournament to boost their resume. But yeah, a lot going on there as far as that goes. We'll break down more of Georgia Tech later on this week as they go through their season. Atlanta United announced that they have waived Adam Jahn, the forward that they brought in last season. The 30-year-old scored 3 goals last season for Atlanta United. I think it was a very tough spot for him because Joseph Martinez, obviously the top player on the team, all MLS player, tore his ACL in the very first game of the season at Nashville. And I think that puts Jahn from a solid reserve forward that can spot Martinez a few games here and there to being the main guy, the scorer. That wasn't Jahn's best position. That's only scoring 3 goals in the entire club season. In all competitions, that's not very good production, just compared to a Joseph Martinez. So I thought he was put in a tough spot, but he did not produce his pro sports, and they are moving on. Right now, Atlanta has 4 forwards. Martinez should be back from injury this season, which is very good. You have the unofficial Lopez twins and Lisandro and Eric Lopez, guys they brought in this. Well, Lisandro, excuse me, was brought in this offseason with a transaction. Eric Lopez came in during last season, and then Jackson Conway, a developmental talent from Atlanta, from the academy and Atlanta United too. He has had some really strong performances with Atlanta United too. He's right now listed as a forward on the senior team. So I think there was not a spot really for Jahn to play in for Atlanta United, and they've decided to move on from there. Training camp should open up later on this month. We're looking very forward to that and having the United MLS back in action. The Atlanta Dream also made a move this past week, signing Cheyenne Parker to a multi-year contract, bringing in the free agent forward who previously was with the Chicago Sky. Obviously, with Candace Parker, no relation once again, signing or going to the Chicago Sky, the all WNBA performer, multi-time champion, going from the LA Sparks to Chicago, back to her home city. That left a spot less for Cheyenne Parker. But Cheyenne is a 6'4" forward. She spent her first 6 years in WNBA with the Sky, had a career year last year, had 13.4 points, 6.4 rebounds, 1.3 assists, and those are all career highs for her during a season. So Atlanta, the Dream, bring in a top forward to pair off with Elizabeth Williams as a mix that strong front court. We'll really see what happens with the rest of their roster. They had some opt outs last year, a good amount of them, including Tiffany Hayes. We'll see what happens there as far as if they come back for this season, as far as that goes. Renee Montgomery as well, who we see doing a great job in the media with her different entities. She's doing commentary for the Hawks right now, or analyst for the Hawks. We see her on Teams Esports and everything like that. But she was an opt out. She's still a player too. So we'll see what happens with her. She was a solid contributor for the squad. So there's a lot going on as far as the Dream and who Coach Carlin can bring back to the squad. We'll be keeping track of that as well. And that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to us. As always, go to thesportsinquirer.net to catch up on all the things that we have going on there. You go to our Twitter and Instagram, which is Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. On Facebook, same deal. And to subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. Until next time, good fight, good night, be safe out there.